So it's after the bass spawn. We're kind of getting into the early summer bite. And one really good way that I like to target fish, other than going out on those main lake fish, when you know, something that you like to do to get away from the boat traffic and get away from everybody, is get back here in these creeks and target like the bluegill or the brim spawn. So this is something that you can do pretty much all across the country. Obviously, it's gonna kind of stagger based on water temps and regions. But right now, we're just kind of back in this big flat. You can kind of see we've got laydowns and some grass on the bank, and there's little fry and shad popping everywhere. So really what we're doing is just looking for like the big groups of bluegill beds. Right now I've got my 360 and I got my perspective mode turned on. So we're just kind of scanning around out here and looking for these fish that are spawning. And you know, you can use your side imaging and just kind of idle around through here. And if I was like practicing for a tournament and wanting to cover a bunch of water, that's probably something I would do. Just kind of idle in here and mark them. And obviously it's gonna spook them off a little bit, but you'll at least know where they're at. But right now we're just kind of being quiet and moving around here real slow. So if you look at the electronics here, you've got a bunch of little circles, and most of the time they have little white dots in the middle of them, and that's how you're going to know that there's bluegill in them. And one cool thing about perspective is you can actually normally be able to tell if there's a bass or like a bigger fish swimming around it. There, you can see all these little circles, and one cool thing about bluegill and the brim is they always spawn in big groups, so they're really not that hard to find with your electronics like this. So right now that's what it looks like on perspective. You can see all the little circles, and you can see the little white dots. I'm probably gonna pause the screen here, but you can see all these little white dots sitting there, like right there, and those are the fish sitting in the bluegill beds. And then like on this side, on this back corner, you can see there's a bigger fish, or there might be two of them sitting there. Yeah, it looks like two, that are swimming around on this back edge. So those could be bass. They don't really look like bass, to be honest, the way they're just kind of cruising around. But that's how you kind of can tell if there's a bigger fish or maybe a bass swimming around to look at it. We got another one swimming around out here. You can kind of see that dot. And then if you don't have live scope and you're looking for them on like 360 or like side imaging, that's what they look like. They look really similar. They're just going to be a little bit smaller based on how you have your range set up. My live scope's a lot shorter of a range forward than my 360 right now, so that's kind of the difference there. But even on your 360, let's zoom in on this for a second. Even on your 360, you're still going to be able to see those white dots in the beds, and that's how you know that there's bluegill in them. And that's one thing that's really important when you're looking for this stuff, is to find sets of bluegill beds that are active, because especially as you get later in the bluegill spawn, you'll start seeing empty bluegill beds, and those you don't really want to mess with those, because if there's not active fish on them, there's probably not going to be bass swimming around to try to catch. When I'm blind fishing like this, one thing that I really like to throw when I'm trying to cover some water a little bit is a popper. It's a little bit quicker than just like dragging or throwing a weightless worm. And who doesn't love a good topwater bite? Right now I'm just kind of in the very back of this little pocket. You can see there's some grass in the water, and it's not super sunny, but all these overhanging trees are gonna create a good shade line, and you can really target those, because even if the bluegill are spawning out here in the sun, the fish will sit back in the shade and just wait to ambush one or move up and feed. And that's one thing you also kind of have to take into account when doing this, is it's kind of a timing scenario. So don't be afraid to like get a good set of active bluegill beds and just kind of rotate or refish them if you think they have bass swimming around them, because just because you're here fishing them, if the bass are just hanging out around all these bluegill, they're probably not going to bite until they're ready for it. But that's one nice thing about throwing this popper. Sometimes you can get an extra reaction bite versus dragging like a Texas rig or throwing a worm. So yeah, we're just kind of fishing down this bank. Like I said, I'm keeping an eye on my graph, seeing if I can't see any just going around here. Kind of just looking, fishing kind of slow, moving along, looking for bluegill beds. There's a ton of fish, there's a ton of bluegill in it, and there's even some bass swimming around it, and there's actually a big laydown that's like running right through the middle of it. So when I see something like that, the first thing, I'll throw that popper over top of it, see if there's something that's real active, but then I'll just pick up like a Texas rig crawl style bait, and I'll just sit here and kind of fan cast around the edges of it, behind it, and just drag through it for a little bit, just to see if we can't trigger one of those fish to bite my crawl bait. So right now I'm just throwing like it's a green pumpkin Yamacraw, just something that's going to look like a bluegill or imitate the same deal. You can use a whole bunch of different craw or creature style baits. Really just a Texas rig that you can kind of drag through real slow and fish for them. But I'll sit here for, you know, 5, 6, 7 minutes and just really pick it apart from a different angle, and just to see if there's anything hanging around it that's ready to bite. There's one right there on those bluegill beds. Not a big one by any means, but definitely a solid fish. So yeah, if you're looking to get away from some boat traffic or just like fishing shallow, bluegill beds, really easy way to pick up a few extra bites. Like I said, that's not a giant one, but still a really solid one, and you could very easily catch a great big one doing this.